Have you ever felt like you were living in a play you never wanted to be in? My name is Sarah, and the story you're about to hear is not just about my journey to freedom. It's a challenge to all limits. Get ready, because everything you think you know about family is about to be turned completely upside down. Behind the seemingly perfect doors of a magnificent New York City brownstone, where people dream of an ideal life, I was living in a silent war. Every meal, every word felt like a knife cutting deep into my soul. Millions of women out there might be living similar lives, but I chose to stand up. This video isn't just about a breakdown. It's an inspiration for anyone searching for the strength to rewrite their own story. Join me, Sarah, as we uncover the truth and the path to freedom. It all started on an ordinary Sunday evening, or rather, an ordinary Sunday evening in my in-laws' house. You know the one where you sense something bad is about to happen, but you still tell yourself, come on, this time it'll be different. Wrong. Always wrong. My father-in-law, Robert, was an older man, the kind you see in old movies, bossy, patriarchal, and always convinced he was right. And my husband, Mark, oh Mark, he was a younger, less haired version of his father. My mother-in-law, Carol, was like a Greek statue, beautiful but soulless, only good for pouring wine and nodding. That dinner, instead of warm family conversation, I was invited into a verbal boxing ring. Think I'm exaggerating? Just wait. It gets much worse. We sat there, beneath a classic chandelier casting long, distorted shadows on the luxurious wood-paneled walls. The scent of pot roast and baked potatoes should have been comforting, but the air in the dining room was thick and suffocating, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. I tried to take a deep breath, but my lungs felt frozen. Robert cleared his throat. That familiar sound was always the signal for an evening of hell to begin. Sarah, he started, his voice drawn out like a tightening rope. Are you still busy with that ridiculous writing nonsense? I told Mark already, a proper woman belongs at home, taking care of her husband and children, not clacking away on a computer all day like some mindless robot. Little Lily, my daughter, sat next to me, her tiny eyes timidly looking up. I managed a strained smile, squeezing her hand gently. But inside, a fire was raging, burning every cell. I thought I'd become immune to those criticisms, but then Mark, my husband, delivered a fatal blow I never saw coming. Mark, the man I'd sworn my life to, just sat there, chewing his meat and echoing his father. Yeah, Sarah, this meal is a little bland. You know, I've told you before, you married me for my money, not because you love me. There's no effort in this marriage, so why should you expect anything? My heart stopped. I looked at him, my eyes dry. Little Ben, my son, was playing with his fork. He didn't understand anything. But Lily, she started to purse her lips. I knew she heard everything. Carol still sat there, wine glass in hand, as if nothing concerned her. That night, when everyone was asleep, I lay awake. And then, a crazy idea sparked in my head. An idea that could change everything, or destroy everything. As Mark's snores echoed from the living room, as darkness swallowed every corner of this vast house, I lay awake. Not hot tears anymore, but a bone-chilling coldness. I had reached my breaking point. I saw a door, not an escape, but an entrance to a new battlefield. And there, I wouldn't be alone. A crazy, audacious idea, one that could change everything, or destroy everything, ignited in my mind. I wouldn't just leave, I would disappear right inside my own home. I couldn't sleep. Every second that ticked by in the silent night was another second something inside me was dying. I stared at the ceiling I had cleaned countless times, the tiny cracks in it seemingly mocking my foolish patience. This was the house I had spent my youth, my energy, and my love turning into a home. But in the end, it had become a gilded cage. It wasn't mine. It had never been mine. It was theirs. And I was the servant. Then a thought like lightning shot through the darkness of my mind. I wouldn't endure it anymore. From now on, no more serving Sarah. No more cleaning, no more laundry, no more cooking, no more tidying. I would stage a full-blown strike, a silent strike whose devastation would be greater than any scream. I turned on my small bedside lamp, found an old notebook and a pencil. Every dish I washed, every shirt I folded, every time I took the kids to school, every bill I paid, every medicine I found for the children, I would write it all down. Each line I wrote wasn't just a chore, but a declaration. I would show them what my uselessness truly meant. I would turn my silence into a roar. Can you guess their reaction? It wasn't easy, especially when Carol started to interfere. The first week of the strike was a living nightmare. Our large house had turned into a real battlefield. Piles of dirty dishes were stacked like Mount Everest in the sink. Leftover food smelled awful. Dirty clothes were strewn across the bedroom and living room floors, as if a major earthquake had just struck. The refrigerator was pathetically empty, with only a few useless canned goods left. Mark, he would grimace and scowl every time he came home from work, complaining about the mess, about his hunger, but he wouldn't lift a finger. What the hell are you doing, Sarah? I can't live in this mess, he growled, but I just looked at him with empty eyes. Robert, my father-in-law, called every day, his voice screaming through the phone as if I had committed a heinous crime. What the hell are you doing, Sarah? Do you want this family to turn into a pigsty? He yelled. I just coldly hung up. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I heard the doorbell. It was Carol. She stepped in, her big eyes scanning the messy living room. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and I could see a flash of anger ignite in her usually composed gaze. She stood amidst the wreckage, like a queen inspecting her newly destroyed kingdom, looking at me with the kind of look reserved for a rotten daughter-in-law, a worthless woman. Sarah, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet but full of hidden meaning, full of latent threat. You know, Mark and his father are very busy. They don't have time for these trivial matters. You should get back to cooking and cleaning. Look what you've done to this house. Family comes first, dear. A proper woman knows how to take care of her home. I stood there, arms crossed, looking straight into her eyes. A cold, slow smirk spread across my lips. Family comes first, Mother Carol? I repeated, my tone equally sweet. Then why don't you help your son cook a meal? Why don't you help your son wash his dirty clothes? I'm not well, I'm on strike. I'm showing him what life is like without his servant me. She froze. Her face turned pale, then flushed red. I could clearly see the shock in her eyes. It was the first time, I swear, the first time in all these years that I dared to talk back to my mother-in-law so openly. I felt a jolt run down my spine. It was a small victory, but it meant so much. Robert wasn't one to give up easily. His next threat made me seriously reevaluate what I was doing. Right after Carol's footsteps faded and the door slammed shut, my phone rang. A terrifyingly familiar number. Robert. I stared at the screen, each ring like a hammer blow to my temple. I knew this wasn't a normal call. This was the big battle. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, then pressed the answer button. His voice exploded in my ear like thunder striking in the middle of a storm. Sarah, what the hell are you doing? You're destroying this family with your unreasonable attitude. Do you even know what you're doing? You're going to lose everything. Everything. Your husband, your children, this house. Do you want to end up a homeless woman, huh? He yelled ceaselessly, every word a whiplash. I stayed silent, letting him vent his anger, letting his venomous words pass like a toxic wind. I felt my hands tremble, but not from fear. Instead, it was from a completely new emotion, cold fury and an ironclad determination. When he paused to catch his breath, his gasping audible through the phone, I replied coldly, each word clear and decisive. No, Robert. You and your son are the ones destroying it. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just taking back what I've given away. Years of dedication, my patience, and my self-respect. I didn't wait for his reply. I hung up. A dry click echoed. My whole body was shaking, but I knew it wasn't weakness. It was adrenaline. It was the feeling of someone who had pushed past their limits and discovered a hidden strength they never knew they possessed. A tiny yet brilliant light had begun to grow inside me. Seeing my daughter's tears, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. It was time to act, and I wouldn't turn back. The tension escalating in this house had become unbearable. Mark had started sleeping in the living room, spreading a thin blanket on the old sofa, as if it were an isolated island in a hostile ocean. He moved out there brazenly, a silent declaration that I don't want to share a space with you anymore. The air in the house was heavier than lead, thick with the smell of spoiled food and a chilling silence. Every step, every breath created an invisible pressure. My children, Lily and Ben, innocent as they were, felt the change most acutely. They became quieter, smiled less, and often looked at me with worried eyes. And then, that fateful day arrived. It was a gloomy Sunday afternoon, with rain pattering outside the window. Lily and Ben were sitting on the shaggy rug in the living room, absorbed in putting together a gigantic jigsaw puzzle. It was a beautiful Disney castle, with thousands of tiny pieces. They had spent a week meticulously assembling each piece, and now, only a few more remained to complete it. Their giggles echoed through the silent house, a rare sound of joy. Mommy, almost done, Lily exclaimed, her face radiant. I smiled, feeling a little warmth seep through the pervasive coldness. Suddenly, the living room door burst open. Mark walked in. He had just gotten home from work, looking more tired and scowling than usual. He looked at the puzzle on the floor, at the colorful pieces, then his gaze stopped at Lily's beaming face. Not a word. Not a sound. He just raised his foot and with an unexpected force, he kicked the puzzle apart. Hundreds of pieces, representing so many hours of my children's effort and hope, scattered across the floor, falling into every nook and cranny, mixing with the dust. The sound of plastic breaking, wood clattering together, and then Lily's scream. She burst into tears, her choking sobs tearing through the quiet space. Ben froze, his eyes wide with horror, looking at the scattered pieces. My heart felt squeezed. I felt a wave of anger and unbearable pain surge within me. It wasn't just a puzzle. It was all that remained of the peace in this family, and he had destroyed it, without hesitation, right in front of my children. In that moment, I knew every limit had been crossed. As I prepared to leave, Mark appeared, blocking my way. The final confrontation, and this time I wouldn't back down. Lily's cries echoed in the room, tearing my heart into pieces. Ben clung to his sister, his big round eyes looking at me for help. I held Lily and Ben tight, both of them trembling, their hot tears soaking my shoulder. I looked up. Mark stood there, still with an emotionless face, empty eyes. My gaze, I thought, was enough to burn him to ashes. In that moment, all fear, all hesitation, all unrealistic hope for change vanished. Only a cold, sharp decision remained, like a knife. Immediately, I knew what I had to do. Not a word, not an explanation. I wiped Lily's tears, gently let her go, and took both children's hands. "Lily, Ben, let's go," I said, my voice dry but full of resolve. I didn't care about anything else anymore. Didn't care about this house, didn't care about the furniture, didn't care about a stunned Mark. My only priority was to get my children out of here. Out of this toxic atmosphere, out of the bitter words, out of the cruel actions. I quickly pulled a heavy suitcase out of the closet, hastily stuffing a few essential clothes for the children and myself into it. Lily and Ben huddled together, their eyes following my every move, seemingly sensing the urgency and determination in every action. I didn't care about the scattered toys, didn't care about the mementos, didn't care about anything that could hold me back. All of it was meaningless now. Our only safe place was my mother Maria's house, in a quiet small town 3 hours away. That was the only place we could find true peace. With every step towards the door, I felt myself being freed, little by little. He accused me of destroying the family over one stupid dinner, but he had no idea I was ready for this moment. I was dragging Lily and Ben's heavy suitcase to the front door, my other hand tightly clutching Lily and Ben's, feeling their small fingers gripping me like lifelines. Every step I took felt heavy as lead, but I didn't hesitate. We were right on the threshold of freedom. I could feel the cold draft from outside. And then, a tall shadow fell over us. Mark stood there. He had blocked the way, his face pale with anger, his eyes blazing, as if I had just insulted him to the core. "Where are you going, Sarah?" His voice was low and menacing, no longer a trace of the indifference or fatigue from earlier. "I'm taking the kids to my mom's house," I replied, my voice cold, trying to keep it from trembling, even as my heart pounded in my chest. "It's not safe for them here anymore." "You're not going anywhere!" he roared, then suddenly reached out, intending to grab my arm, perhaps to pull me back or to stop me. I didn't think. All the resentment, the humiliation, the insults I had endured for so many years, all coalesced into a fire that erupted within me. A slap like a bolt of lightning struck his cheek. The smack echoed through the eerily silent house, like a gunshot, ending an era. He froze. His face was turned completely to one side, my bright red handprint clearly visible on his cheek. His eyes were wide, stunned, unable to believe what had just happened. Silence enveloped us, broken only by my ragged breathing and Lily's soft sobs. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. After we left, my phone exploded. But those calls, I swear, only solidified my decision. Mark clutched his cheek, his eyes red with anger and humiliation. He looked at me as if I were a demon who had just emerged from hell. "What the hell are you doing, Sarah?" he roared, his voice trembling with rage. "You're crazy! You're ruining everything! You're ruining this family, ruining our lives, all because of one stupid dinner? Are you insane?" My heart pounded in my chest, but a strange calm had settled over me. I took a deep breath, feeling my lungs fill with cold air. "One stupid dinner, Mark?" I sneered, a bitter, joyless laugh escaping my lips, filled only with sarcasm and contempt. "You dare to say it was just one stupid dinner?" "No, Mark. It wasn't because of one dinner. It's because of how you and your parents have treated me for all these years. It's because of the daily insults, the contempt, the way I was used, turned into an unpaid servant in my own home. Do you have any idea how I felt?" I didn't wait for his reply. Quick as lightning, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a worn little notebook and a pencil. "You want proof?" I said, my voice clear and sharp as broken glass. "Here. This is my proof." I opened the notebook, quickly flipping through the meticulously recorded pages. "This is a list of everything I've done in this house, every single thing. Every meal, every load of laundry, every stain I cleaned, every doctor's appointment for the kids, every school drop-off and pickup, every bill I paid, every light bulb I changed. Did you ever notice? Or were you too busy criticizing me, too busy thinking I married you for money, to ever realize you had a woman who dedicated everything to this rotten family?" I thrust the notebook towards him, my hand shaking, but my gaze as steady as steel. He looked at the notebook, then at me, his face slowly shifting from anger to shock, then a clear bewilderment. In that moment, I knew my words had pierced him to the core. It was a fatal blow. The saddest part was, In all those calls and messages, not a single person asked how I felt or if the kids were happy. We had driven nonstop for 3 hours through the thick darkness of the New York suburbs. Lily and Ben, exhausted by what had happened, fell asleep in the back seat, their tiny faces still streaked with tears. When the car finally stopped in front of my mother, Maria's cozy little house, I was almost completely drained, both physically and mentally. My whole body ached, but I knew this was just the beginning. As soon as I turned off the car, my phone in my jacket pocket began to vibrate wildly. A missed call, then a text message, then another call, and so on. Mark, Robert, Carol. They took turns assaulting my phone like hungry vultures. I unlocked my phone. Dozens of missed calls and unread messages. Mark. What the hell are you doing, Sarah? Do you know what I'm going through? The kids need their father. You can't just leave like this. Robert. You need to come home immediately. You're destroying everything we've built. Stop making trouble, Sarah. Carol. Dear, you need to reconsider. Don't let temporary emotions destroy a family. You have children. Every message, every call was like a poisoned arrow trying to pierce my heart, trying to make me feel guilty, trying to make me collapse and turn back. I looked at my phone screen, at the familiar names trying to manipulate me, and then, a feeling. A strange sense of peace, an unprecedented serenity, slowly rose within me. Not fear, not regret, but liberation. I had endured enough. I took a deep breath, then slowly, decisively raised my hand. Mute. I pressed the button. All the ringing, all the vibrations, all the venomous words fell silent. A silence enveloped me, not the terrifying silence of the old house, but the silence of freedom. I didn't want to hear another word. I had chosen this path myself and I would see it through. The call from my dad. A man of few words, but this time his words were the comfort I needed most. Not a single one of them, not Mark, not Robert, not Carol asked how I felt. Not a single inquiry about how much I had endured after so many years of mistreatment, of being looked down upon. Not a single question about whether my children were okay or if they were happy with their grandmother. In their minds, I was just a tool, a piece of property that had broken down and needed to be brought back to continue functioning. That blatant selfishness disgusted me, a bitter and utterly lonely feeling. I tossed my phone aside, trying to shake off the negative emotions that were overwhelming me. I looked out the window, gazing at the twinkling stars and the peaceful night sky of the small town, trying to find some peace for my soul. And then, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a familiar number I rarely saw. It was my dad. He, John, wasn't one to talk much about emotions. He was a man of few words, practical, always showing love through actions rather than words. All my life, he rarely called just to ask, "How are you?" But this time, I felt something different. My heart clenched. A feeling of anxiety mixed with a tiny spark of hope crept into my heart. I hesitated for a second, then pressed the answer button, raising the phone to my ear. And then, the chaos began on the other end. Mark, the independent man I once knew, was now completely helpless. I raised the phone to my ear, still carrying a bit of anxiety, unsure what awaited me on the other end. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice still a little choked. "Are you okay, honey?" My dad, John's voice, deep and steady as always. Not a single accusation, no roundabout questions about why I left, no criticism of my attitude. Just a simple, direct question. But it went straight to my bleeding heart. After hours of being attacked by venomous words, by selfish demands, just that one question from my dad made me feel like I was going to burst. My eyes welled up. "I'm fine, Dad." I tried to keep my voice from trembling, even as relief washed over me. A short silence, only his soft breathing through the phone. Then he said, "Good. You always know home is your safe place, Sarah. Don't worry about anything. Your mom and I are always here." He didn't say another word about Mark, about my in-laws, or about any of the mess I had just gone through. He didn't need to say it. That was it. Unbelievably simple. But it carried more power than 1,000 empty words of comfort. That was how my dad showed his love and support. A clear, unmistakable message. No matter if the world turned its back on me, no matter how much I was crushed, there would always be a place, a man, who would always be my solid anchor. Right then I felt a huge burden, a rock that had weighed heavily on my chest for so many years, slowly being lifted. I took a deep breath, feeling my lungs fill with fresh air. I was home. I was safe. Things didn't just stop at questions about the kids. Then he demanded something even crazier. Mark struggled to manage family life without me. He constantly asked me about everything. "Sarah, do you know where my green briefcase is? I can't find it. Sarah, what's the password for the utility bill app? I need to log in." I only provided the most essential information little by little, coldly and decisively. I refused to make his life easier. He had his chance. He chose to throw it away. And then, Late one afternoon, as I was sitting and reading to Lily and Ben in my mom's living room, the phone rang again. It was Mark. His voice was no longer pleading. This time, it was filled with anger, panic, and an astonishing unreasonableness. "Sarah!" his voice roared, as if I were the cause of all the world's problems. "Are you going to send the mortgage payment? I can't pay it alone anymore. You know how much that amount is." I laughed, not a joyful laugh, but a mocking, bitter laugh that echoed through the quiet space of the house. It was the sound of utter contempt. "You're living in that house, Mark," I replied, my voice as cold as ice. "The kids are with me, in a safe and peaceful place. Who do you think is going to pay for a house I don't live in and don't want to live in anymore? You take care of it yourself. That's your responsibility, not mine." I didn't give him a chance to say another word. I hung up, a decisive click, severing any remaining ties between us. I was too tired of his unreasonableness and selfishness. The burden I had carried for so long was finally lifted. I sighed with relief, looked into my children's curious eyes, and felt a deep sense of peace. My new life, and my children's, had finally truly begun. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Robert, my father-in-law, showed up. Right at my mom's doorstep. One rare peaceful morning, I was sitting in my mom's living room, sipping warm coffee and watching Lily and Ben busily coloring on the floor. The morning sun streamed through the window, bringing with it the scent of flowers and freshness. An unprecedented sense of peace enveloped me. I thought, finally, I could breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, from the window, I saw a sleek, terrifyingly familiar black car turn onto the small road leading to my mom's house and stop. My heart clenched. A cold feeling ran down my spine. The car door opened, and a tall, imposing figure stepped out. Robert, my father-in-law. His face was flushed red, his eyes sharp as daggers, staring straight at the house as if searching for an enemy. A wave of anxiety and fear rose within me, chilling. I felt my body stiffen, unable to move. But then, I looked at my mom, Maria. My mom, a small woman with silvering hair. But her will was as strong as steel. She didn't say a word, just looked at me steadily, her eyes seeming to say, "Don't worry, honey." Then, slowly but powerfully, my mom stood up. She adjusted her bathrobe, walked straight to the front door. Every gesture exuded an astonishing confidence and determination. She opened the door, standing in the doorway like a solid wall, her eyes directly meeting Robert's blazing gaze. Not a hint of fear. "I'll handle it," my mom said, her voice strangely calm, as if she were talking about the weather, but her eyes and posture showed no quarter. The battle, I knew, had moved to a whole new level. And this time I had my mom by my side. The final battle between my mom and my ex-father-in-law. Who would win? Robert stood there, towering in the doorway, his eyes blazing with anger. He didn't bother to wait for my mom to say another word. Immediately, he began to roar, his voice like thunder on a clear day, echoing through the quiet little street. "Maria, you tell your daughter to get back to that house immediately. She's tearing my family apart. She's ruining my son's life, ruining my grandchildren's future. She's crazy. A woman like that doesn't deserve to be a wife, a mother. Tell her to come back now." He yelled nonstop, his face flushed red with rage. I held my breath, standing huddled behind my mom, feeling a wave of fear and disgust wash over me. But my mom, Maria, still stood there, small but as resilient as a rock. She looked straight into Robert's eyes, without flinching, her gaze sharp as a dagger. But her voice was strangely calm, almost a whisper, yet carrying an undeniable authority. "Robert," my mom said, each word clear and decisive, "if you have something to say to my daughter, you can say it out here. She's not coming out. And you should remember," my mom's voice rose slightly, "you need to treat my daughter better. She's been through enough. More than anyone, I know what she's had to endure in that family of yours." "Don't think I don't know anything." Robert froze. His mouth hung open, his eyes slowly shifted from anger to shock, then a look of bewilderment appeared. He hadn't expected my mom to be so firm, hadn't expected her to dare to confront him directly, and especially, hadn't expected her to know so much. He took a step back, then another, as if he had just been hit by an invisible punch. Finally, he turned and left, without another word, climbing into his sleek black car and speeding away, leaving a trail of gray smoke in the air. The sound of the car engine slowly faded and then completely vanished. A silence fell over us, but it was the silence of victory. After all this, I found my own answers. A new ending, not a return. I stood there, watching the shadow of Robert's car disappear down the road, until it was completely out of sight. The smell of gasoline and the tense atmosphere still lingered in the air, but I knew it would soon fade. A feeling I had craved for years, suddenly flooded my mind. Relief. Not the relief of escaping danger, but the relief of someone who had just shed a multi-ton burden from their shoulders. I took a deep breath, my lungs filling with fresh air, feeling like I had been reborn. The ghosts of Robert, Mark, Carol, of all the venomous words and contempt they had showered upon me, had finally been dispelled. I knew, more certainly than ever, that I had made the right decision. There was no longer any doubt. I wouldn't go back. Never. That house, that family, was now just a painful memory, a chapter closed in the book of my life. I had prioritized my happiness. I had prioritized my children's peace. I had learned a valuable lesson, one I would never forget. Sometimes, to truly live, to find the light, you have to dare to let go of what's hurting you, even if it's an entire life you've meticulously built. And now, I was ready to write a new chapter, a completely different one, for myself and for my children. My new life wasn't easy, but it was mine. Most importantly, my children found their smiles again. In the months that followed, my life wasn't a fairy tale, not a path paved with roses and velvet. Life never is. There were nights, when everyone was asleep, when darkness enveloped the small room, I still lay awake, tears silently soaking my pillow. I wondered if I was strong enough to continue, if I could do it all alone. The ghosts of the past, the bitter words, the contempt still occasionally haunted my mind. It was a relentless inner battle. But then, every morning when I woke up, I saw Lily and Ben. I saw their radiant smiles, their clear eyes no longer touched by fear. They laughed more, played more joyfully, and especially, they no longer flinched when the phone rang. Their smiles were the greatest healing balm, the motivation for me to keep fighting. We explored my mom's peaceful small town together. We walked in the park, breathed the fresh air, watched the birds chirping on the branches. We spent hours in the local library, immersing ourselves in the world of fairy tales and exciting adventures. I taught them how to bake, how to grow a few small vegetables in the garden. Every moment with my children was a gift, a miracle. Slowly, I began to find myself again, not the perfect wife or dutiful daughter-in-law that others wanted me to be. I was no longer someone's faded shadow. I was Sarah, a strong, independent woman, and most importantly, a mother who was completely devoted to her children. I was redefining happiness for myself, one day at a time. And then, an unexpected surprise from Mark. A proposal I never saw coming. One afternoon, as I was working on my old laptop in the quiet of the room, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Mark. I hesitated for a second. After so many calls filled with anger, panic, and irrationality, I didn't know what he wanted this time. But then, I decided to answer. Sarah, his voice came through, no longer a growl or a shout. His voice was low, sounding tired, and even sad. A weariness that permeated every word. I want a divorce. I was silent. The whole world seemed to stop spinning. I had expected this. I had been preparing myself for this moment for a long time. But hearing him say it himself, an indescribable feeling welled up inside me. Not sadness, not pain, but an emptiness, a liberation accompanied by a touch of regret for what had been, for the dreams that had died. I can't live alone anymore, Sarah, he continued, his voice almost desperate. The house is messy, no one to clean, no one to cook. I don't know what to do without you. I need a fresh start. And I think you do too. I don't think we can go on like this. I remained silent. His words didn't need confirmation. I had nodded, even though he couldn't see me. All right, Mark. I agree, I said, my voice dry but full of resolve. In that moment, I knew everything was officially over. There was no more hope. And that was for the best. The divorce process wasn't easy, but I got what I wanted. Freedom and a new future for me and my children. The legal process was much more complicated than I had imagined. It wasn't just signing a few papers and going our separate ways. Immediately, Robert and Carol intervened, turning it into an all-out war. They hired the best lawyers, trying every tactic to leave me penniless, to force me to give up custody of my children, to make me regret my decision. Their lawyer constantly sent thick legal documents, forcing me to attend hearings, trying to dig up every tiny detail of my life to portray me as a bad mother, an irresponsible wife. There were days I felt exhausted, wanting to give up. The pressure from threatening phone calls, from veiled remarks, from the incessant summonses just piled up. But then, I looked at the peaceful faces of Lily and Ben as they slept soundly, and I knew I couldn't give up. I sought out a renowned divorce lawyer in New York, a strong and sharp woman named Miss Jenkins. She listened to my story patiently, and her eyes sparkled with empathy and determination. Miss Jenkins said, her voice deep but powerful. Do you have proof? What you're telling me? We need to prove it. I smiled. Yes, Miss Jenkins. I have everything. I handed her my carefully documented little notebook, copies of text messages, and recordings of calls I had secretly made. Robert and Carol never expected me to be so prepared. The legal battle dragged on for months. There were tense court sessions, where Robert and Carol sat opposite me, their eyes filled with contempt and anger. They constantly interrupted, constantly made baseless accusations, But Miss Jenkins always stood by me, sharply refuting every one of their arguments. And then, the day of the final verdict arrived. The judge made the pronouncement. I had full custody of my children and enough alimony for us to have a new start, an independent life. It felt like a rock had been lifted from my chest after many years. Not just a rock, but a whole mountain. I was free. Completely. Liberated. Looking back, I don't regret anything. Every step, every decision led me to where I belong. Now, over a year has passed. A year of challenges, of tears, but also a year of rebirth. I'm living in a cozy little apartment in a peaceful neighborhood, where from the living room window, I can see children playing in the small park. It's not as flashy as the old house, but every corner of this apartment is my own, filled with laughter and warmth. I've continued my writing the work they once called nonsense. But this time, I do it not for money or to prove myself. I do it with true passion, with every word a part of my soul. Every story I write is an affirmation of my existence, of the voice I have found again. I no longer fear criticism, no longer try to please anyone but myself and my children. The fear has vanished, replaced by self-confidence and self-respect. My children, Lily and Ben, are now the happiest children I've ever seen. They are innocent, carefree, without a trace of anxiety or fear. They can burst into laughter watching a cartoon, can freely scribble on the walls, which I won't scold them for, and can run around the house without fear of someone frowning. Life still has its own difficulties, bills to pay, moments of fatigue or loneliness. But at least, I'm in the driver's seat. I'm the one deciding the direction of my life. I've learned that happiness isn't a destination, but a journey. And I, Sarah, am enjoying every moment of that journey with a free heart, a peaceful soul, and a promising future. This isn't just my story. This is the story of anyone who has ever been underestimated, held captive, but ultimately found the strength to break free from their chains and take flight. If you're in a similar situation, do you dare to stand up? This is my story, Sarah. A story not just about finding myself again, finding my voice, but also about the journey of shedding the false definitions that others tried to impose on me. In a noisy world, where everyone tries to define who you are, what you should do, and how you should live, I chose to listen to my inner voice. If you're watching this, and you feel trapped in your own life in a toxic relationship, in an unhappy job, or under heavy societal expectations, remember that you have the right to choose. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the architect of your own life. You have the right to be happy. You have the right to live an authentic life, to be loved and respected. Don't be afraid to confront those who try to drag you down. Don't be afraid to stand up, to tear up the old script that others wrote for you. And most importantly, don't be afraid to write your own story, a story full of courage, full of freedom, and full of light. This life is yours. Live it to the fullest. Find the strength within you. And remember, you are not alone. Many people have been through similar experiences, and if I can do it, so can you. Start your own journey, today. Will I find new love? Or will I live the rest of my life in this peace? I don't know what the future holds. The road ahead is long, and life is always full of surprises. Perhaps, one day, I will find a new love, a true love, one who appreciates me for who I really am, one who will never try to define or confine me, someone who will be a partner, not a boss. Or perhaps, I will choose to live a single life, focusing entirely on myself, on my increasingly thriving writing career, and on raising Lily and Ben to be confident, strong, and happy children. That's a wonderful choice too. Whatever happens, I know one thing for certain. I have found peace. It's not something tangible that people can touch, but it's the most precious thing I've ever owned. It's the tranquility in my soul, the feeling of being myself, of being free to breathe without any pressure weighing me down. It's the peace that comes from knowing I fought, I endured, and I won. It comes from knowing I prioritized myself, protected my children, and dared to walk my own path, no matter how difficult. Every morning when I wake up, when I see the sunlight filtering through the window of my cozy little apartment, when I hear Lily and Ben's clear laughter, I know I made the best decision of my life. My life, once shattered, is now reassembled into a completely new picture, vibrant and full of hope. This isn't just an ending, it's a beginning. A beginning of a new life. A new Sarah, stronger, freer, and happier than ever before. And that's all I need. And here's the last thing I want to tell you. Never lose yourself for anyone or anything. Stand up for yourself, because you deserve to be happy. Thank you for listening to my story. See you next time.